We live in a world our ancestors would barely recognize. Around the globe, the impact of human ingenuity is now everywhere. We've pushed back the limits of our planet at speeds, depths, and heights that would have left our forebears breathless. Driving all these achievements is humankind's extraordinary gift for invention. Through genius and inspiration, we've created exceptional solutions to complex problems. From the everyday to the spectacular, some good and some not so good. This series celebrates the million ways our great inventions have transformed our world.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Of all the inventions to come out of the 20th century, it's had one of the greatest impacts on our lives. It's brought the world together.
It was a form of sort of shared consciousness on a global scale.
You could be halfway across the world, but find this affinity.
But it's also changed the way we live.
When it comes into the living room, into the home, it changes the family dynamic.
From bringing the effects of war and conflict into our living rooms, to changing the way we make important decisions. Now the entertainment and opinion-altering machine called television is with us everywhere.
What would life be like without them? We'd probably all read books, sing songs, and play charades for hours on end. Pretty bleak.
The televisions in our living room are the result of a genuinely international collaboration. Components from all over the world are combined to create televisions of all sizes that now do so much more than transmit television. The quality of the picture and the range of the multimedia capabilities are checked automatically by computers, ensuring that our TVs are better than ever before. And the definition of the images are challenging the resolution of the human eye, 4K, 8K, even on screens that can roll up. It seems incredible that just over a century ago, the idea of transmitting moving images was just a dream. So how did this magical world-changing invention become a reality? The idea of capturing movement in a picture has enthralled us for millennia.
I think from the moment that humans began to paint, humans began to recreate their world, you see quite often in cave paintings a sort of a form of early animation, which is a series of frames, a series of events that are going on. They're trying to create this sense of movement.
But it's not until the mid-1600s that inventors managed to project moving images onto a screen.
Christian Huygens invents the magic lantern and this strange little device with lenses, glass, throwing images using a lantern onto a wall would produce primitive moving images.
That playing with light is very important because once you get to light and glass, then you're getting into a point where you're beginning to approach a lens.
And by the mid-1800s, a new chemical process managed to capture these images and freeze them onto paper. The photograph was born.
A photographic image is created by converting light into a chemical reaction. Light enters through a pinhole in the camera lens, and the more light, the greater the chemical reaction. Developing the chemical reaction on the photographic paper creates an image.
For the first time ever, a single moment in time could be eternally captured in a photograph that could be seen by millions. It wasn't long before inventors wondered whether we could capture moving pictures. Early pioneers had an idea, and it relied on the strange way our brain processes images.
There's something that our brain does that's called persistence of vision. If you display a bunch of photographs one after another, because it can only process the photograph for so much time, it fills in the gap between one photograph and another. The brain puts all these pictures together in what seems like a seamless flow of images.
But these fairground flicks could only be seen by one viewer at a time. By the late 1800s, a new technology was developed, allowing hundreds to view moving images: the motion picture camera. Translucent photographic film runs behind a lens at speed, each frame sharply exposed by the rapid opening and closing of a shutter. When you shine light through the transparent images, they come to life. From cave paintings to Hollywood, the moving camera becomes a reality.
Cut! Fine, great.
Entertainment enters a new era. When this phenomenon is revealed to the public, it's an instant sensation. So effective was the illusion of movement that there were reports early moviegoers were convinced it was real.
The one that most often springs to people's mind is a short film made in France of a train coming into a platform. There were reports at the time of people trying to flee the cinema because of the way in which the train appeared to be coming straight at them.
The movie industry boomed, and there were queues outside picture houses around the world. The race was on for inventors to bring this sensational new entertainment form into the home. By the 1920s, wireless radios had shown that it was possible to transmit at least sound into the living room. First, a microphone converts sound into an electrical signal. A thin membrane vibrates as it's hit by sound waves. The tiny movement is converted into an electrical signal. A carrier signal then transmits the information over long distances into people's homes. The receiver on the other end converts the modified radio waves back into the original electrical signal, which is amplified to vibrate a speaker that recreates the original sound waves picked up by the microphone. But could you convert moving images into electromagnetic waves and then back into images to deliver pictures straight to the living room? The race was on to invent a way of converting light and sound into electrical signals. London, 1926. In a makeshift laboratory, failed inventor John Logie Baird is feverishly looking for a way to leave his mark on the world.
Now, he was your classic madcap inventor. He tried to invent all sorts of things that have pretty much sunk into history, like a new air-soled shoe, a type of manufactured diamond, a safety razor made of glass that he had to stop working on because he cut himself really badly, and a homemade hemorrhoid cream. Despite all these failures, he doesn't give up, and it's his next obsession that is what we remember him for: transmitting moving images.
Baird knew that it was possible to turn sound into an electrical signal that could be broadcast through the air.
But how could he take these pictures and translate them into an electronic signal that would allow him to transmit them?
The impossible becomes possible for Logie Baird by the recent discovery of a curious new invention that turns light into an electrical signal: the photoelectric cell.
As light falls on that cell, depending on if there's more light or less light, you get a smaller or larger electric current, and that means you can transmit that light level.
The key was to somehow split images up into packets of information that could be rebuilt into pictures in the home.
So how do you break down an image, all the different locations into, is there light there, is there not light there, that sort of thing? They had actually come up with this idea of having a disc with holes in that you could spin to build this up.
In 1926, John Logie Baird is ready to test his new invention. The subject he chooses to transmit in this potentially historic moment is a ventriloquist's dummy. As the disc spins, each hole allows light from different sections of the image to pass through to the light-sensitive cell. As the changing light hits the cell, it generates an electrical signal.
You get a pattern of electrical signals that tells you the brightness of each individual column in the image, and once you'd got that whole image, you could translate that into an electrical signal and transmit it.
Once the signal reaches the living room, the process is reversed. It drives a lamp that pulses brighter or darker depending on the signal strength. In front of this lamp is another spinning disc. Precisely matching the speed and position of the original, it projects individual lines of light that recreate the original image.
The person looking at that image is seeing the right brightness in the right place, and so they get what looks to them like a moving image.
As the machine whirs to life, incredibly, the dummy's ghostly image appears at the other end.
This is an utterly huge moment. It is the birth of television, something that is now such a huge part of our lives. That was its very inception.
Television is born. But Baird's invention isn't the one that will end up in our homes. Mechanical television had too many problems to take over the world.
This thing is absolutely tiny to start with. You know, the screen is only about an inch wide, and it doesn't have a lot of detail, so very blurry images. And remember as well, this is mechanical. Moving parts are noisy. There's got to be a better way.
A completely different system for turning light into electricity will change our world. And the inspiration came from a very unusual place. (1921) Idaho. Farm boy Philo Farnsworth becomes obsessed with the technological marvel of his age.
The 14-year-old Philo Farnsworth moved with his family to a farm in Idaho, and the family farm got electricity. Farnsworth was fascinated by it, and something sparked in Philo's mind. He thought maybe this electricity, this fascinating new invention, could be used to transmit a moving image.
Fittingly, for a 14-year-old with only a rudimentary knowledge of physics, his idea is reassuringly down to earth.
His inspiration came from the farm. He was out there, 14 years old, ploughing the field in straight lines, and he thought maybe a moving image could be cut into lines like the plough lines on his field, and those lines could each be turned into an electrical signal, and those electrical signals could be converted back into lines of an image at the other end. A 14-year-old kid on a farm in Idaho came up with the fundamental idea that makes television. Genius.
Farnsworth's childhood inspiration will eventually change the world. Today, television is directly broadcast to us in our homes, on the beach, on the train, anywhere we want. It's created global phenomena, pin-ups, and kept us up to date with news from all corners of the globe. But none of this could happen until the farm boy found a way of making his dream a reality. Farnsworth turns to the one person in his small town who might be able to help.
His high school teacher, the scienciest person he can find. That's who helps him turn this dream into a real idea.
By 1927, he makes the world's very first demonstration of electronic television, the image dissector. The key improvement of Farnsworth's concept over Logie Baird's was that it had no moving mechanical parts. Instead of using spinning discs to convert light into an electrical signal, Farnsworth uses a device called a cathode ray tube that sends beams of electrons to scan an image in a series of lines, just like plowing a field.
A cathode ray tube is a glass tube from which almost all of the air has been removed. And that means that if you fire an electron in that tube, then it can move pretty much freely because there's nothing in the way, there's no gas molecules to stop it. Those electrons can then turn into a flash of light. Then you can use this to display an image.
The electron beam is controlled by fluctuating magnetic fields that send the beam across the screen in a series of precise lines. As the intensity of the beam changes, it creates areas of varying light and shade. The beam moves so fast, it tricks the human eye into seeing solid images.
Then you have to redraw those images quickly enough that it gives the illusion of movement. If you can put all of these pieces together, then you've got the building blocks of an early electronic television.
It took Farnsworth 8 years to transform cathode ray tube technology into a moving image with no moving parts, making John Logie Baird's mechanical system obsolete. But Farnsworth's television is no use without a camera. Enter Soviet émigré Vladimir Zworykin, an inventor obsessed with the conversion of moving images into electrical signals. Turned down by his bosses at Westinghouse, Zworykin takes his idea to another company.
Luckily for Zworykin, the head of a company called RCA did see the light, or at least the way to turn the light into an electrical signal.
You were a good salesman, and I was a good dreamer. We talked about broadcasting moving images by electronics.
In fact, he made Zworykin the head of this division of the company, giving him a chance to really put his ideas to the test.
At RCA, Zworykin is encouraged to develop his iconoscope. Like Farnsworth's television screen, the iconoscope uses a cathode ray tube behind a lens to convert light into electrical signals.
Zworykin, he has the principle of the drawn lines, the electron beam hitting the cathode ray tube. And that's really essentially the pattern, the model that everything's built from.
But his television camera was far more complex than Farnsworth's television screen. Perhaps the farm boy could help simplify it.
Zworykin, he was within grasping distance. He could see how it could work, but there was a jump that he wasn't able to make, and he couldn't work out what it was. Word filtered through to RCA that there was another inventor, the beautifully named Philo Farnsworth, who was working on an invention which, to all intents and purposes, was the same basic principle.
The genius from the farm was back in the picture. Zworykin pays Farnsworth a visit. What happened at that meeting is lost to history. But Zworykin must have discovered something in Farnsworth's invention that would transform his television system.
When Zworykin came out of Farnsworth Lab, one of the first things he did was contact RCA and tell them to make a copy of what he'd just seen.
Reading the descriptions of the two devices, the way in which the electron beam was used to scan the image and transmit an image was very similar. The way that it built up the image line by line is very, very similar.
Within a few years, Zworykin has perfected his first ever working camera. Television as we know it has arrived. But who was the inventor? The Russian émigré and the farm boy from Idaho both have slightly different systems. While Zworykin's is adopted in America, Farnsworth is forced to look overseas.
Farnsworth goes to Europe, and he basically is taking around his invention, looking for people who are interested in it.
In Germany, he finds a publicity-hungry political party who immediately see the potential of Farnsworth's image dissector.
People who think this is a phenomenal idea, we can do a lot with that, as Nazis, Nazi Germany. Because the idea of being able to broadcast propaganda into people's homes, I mean, that's the essence of the Nazi rise to power, is the effective use of propaganda.
And with the 1936 Olympics coming up, the Nazis see television as an ideal way to promote the Games and the fledgling Third Reich. Propaganda Minister Joseph Goebbels relishes the thought of beaming moving pictures across the nation and Europe. In propaganda terms, it would be a double whammy.
And they had two ambitions there. One is to show the superiority of the Aryan race, but two, through technologically achieving the ability to broadcast television, they were attempting to prove that they were the most technologically superior country.
But the Nazis soon discover the downside of being pioneers. In the age before satellites, their ability to showcase the dramatic potential for television would be seen by a relatively small number.
You could only broadcast to people who were within a direct line of sight of a radio antenna. And so this meant for the Olympic Games, it could only really broadcast to people nearby in Germany.
And there's another, more obvious obstacle to the Nazis getting their twisted message across to the German people.
Most folks back then didn't have a TV set, but the Nazis were so determined to show off their superiority that they set up these special viewing rooms in Berlin and Potsdam for people to gather and actually see the Olympic Games without being in the stadium.
And those who did see it were mesmerized.
This really was a groundbreaking event because for the first time people were able to watch a live sporting event without physically being there.
You have a collective watching television together. We're quite used to this now, but at that moment, if you couldn't go and see the games, it was perhaps even more thrilling to see them on a screen.
In a moment of supreme irony, the Nazis' global first was showcasing the combined work of Farnsworth, a Mormon, and Zworykin, a Jew, both persecuted minorities. Even their message of racial superiority was blunted.
The Nazis' grand plan of showing off their superiority backfired in a rather major way because, of course, Jesse Owens, an African-American athlete, proceeded to win, well, pretty much everything he entered.
Hitler's hoping that what it'll show is the superiority of the Aryan race, but of course, it doesn't show that at all. It shows the amazing Jesse Owens.
Jesse Owens set television down a path that would create a global behemoth, changing our relationship with sporting events forever.
We see the birth of the first televised sporting superstar. So you kind of think of, the Messis and the Ronaldos of today. Well, it was that moment that began it all.
The modern sporting industry is entirely shaped around the television set. I mean, it exists in the form it does because of the arrival of television. It's unlike anything else that's happened before. It's unlike radio. It's the idea of seeing live sports in front of you when you're nowhere near that event. It's the spark that changes the world of sport forever.
Sports on television taps into an important part of our psychology in a way no other entertainment form had done before.
We're social beings, right? So team sports are appealing precisely because they appeal to that part of our psyche, right? And you think about, everything's set up so you feel part of the team, the colors you wear, the chants that you sing, the fact that you're all in a group at the same time having a unified purpose.
And it's a phenomenon that is truly international.
The wonderful thing about what TV sports does is you could be in Canada and supporting, a team in Europe. You could be, halfway across the world, but find this affinity. And I think that's what the televised aspect does.
Why would you go to the ground? People throw beer on my head from behind without even intending to. And so with television, you've got all the beauty of sport without the horror.
Today, the sports industry is worth upwards of $620 billion a year. But in 1939, television's path to global domination had to be put on hold. Just 3 years after the first televised Olympics, the Nazis create a global crisis. And the genius inventors behind television are called upon by the Allies to develop new technologies to help defeat the Axis powers. Philo Farnsworth and Vladimir Zworykin used their television expertise to develop radar and early night vision. By 1945, the war is over, and the world begins to pick up the pieces. In the aftermath, television fast emerges as one of the defining technologies of the 20th century. Television will become a worldwide hit, but the driving force behind its rise to power is the United States. For many Americans, life after the Second World War was good, very good. The nation cements its place as a new world superpower. The unprecedented manufacturing capability built up during the war is poised to exploit the peace.
You've got the production line, you've got new plastics, you've got new materials coming online. Suddenly, the idea of what was previously an unimaginably expensive item, like a refrigerator, becomes affordable to the booming consumer groups. And so there's this explosion in things that are democratically available.
And American consumers don't hold back. Items that were previously unattainable become an everyday reality. Keeping up with the Joneses is kicked into overdrive.
Human beings are creatures that respond to status very much. Now, one of the indicators of status or success are the material goods that we accumulate. So post-war, when all of a sudden, there seems to be, much more abundance than there was, these status symbols become important.
And of all the must-have luxury items rolling off the production line and into the home, television becomes the glue that holds this nation of immigrants together.
All of a sudden, the TV becomes one of the most important status symbols. So I can talk to you about what I saw on TV the other day, and I can join in the conversation when other people are speaking about it. So it becomes this kind of great social connector as well.
The impact is spectacular. From under 1 million television sets in 1948, within just 7 years, there were over 37.5 million. In Europe, Asia, all over the world, there's an explosion of television manufacturers and owners. And it's continued through to today. Around 230 million television sets are sold each year, and almost 80% of households own one. Back in the 1950s, television had already transformed the sports industry. It was now poised to become the driving force for prosperity around the world. Television advertising became the beating heart of capitalism.
The people who understood the power and the value of this medium were the advertisers. And they were the people who understood that you could fill this airtime with stuff and people would watch.
From the very beginning, advertisers realized that to sell products, you had to have an audience.
A lot of the early game shows, Wheel of Fortune, those sorts of things, they are advertiser-owned properties that the advertisers give to the television companies, and they place their sponsored material around it. The first, regular dramas in people's lives were the soap operas, and these were, again, created by advertising agencies given to television companies so that they could put their brands around it. The advertising industry creates television content just to drive the market.
The inventors of television had transformed the world in ways they could never have imagined. By the early 1950s, a new generation of experts were on the cusp of taking black and white television to the next level.
When you look at the world around you, you can see millions of different colours. But what's incredible is that information is actually brought to you by just 3 different kinds of receptor on the back of your eye. One that detects red light, one that detects green light, and one that detects blue light. And that means that no matter how subtle or complicated you might feel the hues are in front of you, you can actually make all of them just by mixing the right amount of those 3 colours of light.
A black and white television screen is coated with phosphor and only lights up in shades of gray. If engineers could mimic the human retina on the inside of a television screen, they could transform black and white into color. It's the same principle for creating color used by television manufacturers today. But for 1950s engineers, it meant tripling the complexity of the cathode ray tube.
But if you want a colour TV, you need 3 different kinds of phosphor that are going to give off red light, green light, or blue light when the beam of electron hits them. Instead of having one black and white image, you have to have a red image, a green image, and a blue image, which is created by hitting each of those different lines of phosphor. And that means that then you can build up those 3 images on top of each other and create any colour you like. If you have red, green, and blue all together, you get the colour white. If you have none of them, you get the colour black. And by different combinations, you can get any other colour you can think of.
As early as 1951, color TV began being broadcast in the United States. And inevitably, it was the advertisers who first saw the value of promoting products in vibrant color.
If you're going to show a cooked meal, it's going to look so much better if you can see the colour of that meal and not just see a black and white version of it. There are people who dress food, paint food, put things on so that everything feels more vibrant and exciting. So they really, really understand the value of colour.
Advertising, game shows, dramas, regular features of the television landscape are soon transforming global culture. But it's one single genre of television that will have the most dramatic impact on societies around the world. For centuries, people read about the news first months, then days after the event. With radio, news is broadcast directly into the home, and people hear about it within hours or even minutes of an event. But as television ownership exploded in the 1950s, news was completely turned on its head. For the first time, it became possible for the population to see what was going on around the world.
With the news on TV, it feels like it's the first person. It doesn't feel like you're telling me the story. It feels like I'm there. And because of that, there's a rawness to it, and I think an honesty to it.
Politics in particular was affected in a way no one could see coming.
People are no longer so interested in how things sound. They're kind of looking for the person who looks good, who they trust.
Nowhere is this clearer than in 1960, with the United States' first ever televised presidential debate. 70 million Americans tune in to watch Richard Nixon and John F. Kennedy debate on stage.
Nixon had just come out of hospital. He wasn't well. Under the bright lights of the studio, he looked sweaty, which to Americans at home watching him made them think he was nervous. Why would he be sweating in this scenario? Kennedy was very, very televisual. I mean, Kennedy's the first modern television president.
Once again, television proved adept at tapping into our psychology.
Those that listened to the debate on the radio had Nixon ahead. Those that watched it on TV had Kennedy ahead. Why? Because we make decisions based on what we see. So Kennedy is a young, healthy, attractive man. Nixon is older, he's feeble. So I think that we're primed to kind of look at visual cues to see how honest someone is, how passionate they are, and cues that we might not be able to pick up just in their voice.
Television was having other profound effects on society. Today, we're used to receiving television images 24/7, fed from around the globe as they happen. But in the early days of television, that wasn't possible. The line-of-sight broadcast methods meant transmission relied on a series of relay towers. Getting images across oceans had to be done the old-fashioned way.
One way you can get around this is by having a film camera actually filming the pictures on a television screen. Which sounds utterly crazy, but that's what they did, and they would ship the film to where it needed to go. Fast forward to the 1950s, and videotape technology is being developed, and that's a much more sophisticated way of doing this. You can directly capture the image onto videotape, but you still need to post it to where it needs to go. That could take days to get there.
But by the start of the 1960s, a new breed of inventors are about to shrink the world. After a series of exploratory artificial satellites have blazed the trail, in 1962, Telstar 1 is launched. It's the first satellite in history to receive and transmit a live television image.
It's a huge game changer because it opens up being able to get live televisual images from almost any point on the planet.
Television, and in particular news, enters a new era. The race is suddenly on to be the first network to get a reporter on the scene.
Because there's a huge ratings pressure on television in America, that it's not enough for the camera to be there. The camera's got to be there and get the best stories.
By the end of the 1960s, the competition to be first pushes journalists to record the vivid frontline details of the Vietnam War.
They start showing what's really happening at the sharp edge of the Vietnam War. And what the American public find is that they don't like that.
So you've got color TV, and what you have is pictures of people being burned by napalm, soldiers being executed on the streets, of coffins on conveyor belts of soldiers coming back home.
and it's suddenly happening in your living room. You can't pretend this doesn't exist. It's right in your house. It's right in your face.
The horrific images dramatically changed the way many Americans view the conflict.
We begin to see anti-war protests, and we begin to see, thousands of people demonstrating against the war.
The experience of these images on TV forms public opinion and makes political change. And this is how important TV becomes from the 1960s onwards.
In the early 70s, the very leader of the democratic world is in television's firing line. The American public were ambivalent about Nixon's law-breaking. That changed when they were confronted with the truth on live television. In 1973, former White House counsel John Dean gave testimony to the Senate Watergate Committee.
Can you honestly believe that the president was not aware of the full implications of the cover-up activities?
I would think the president would certainly have some appreciation of the legal problems involved, yes, indeed.
Watergate, it was the televised nature of it that made America turn against their president.
I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow.
When Nixon resigns, he resigns on television to the American people. Because by then, the television is no longer just something that's observing. It is the direct line between the president and the people.
Television showed it had the power to divide nations and even topple world leaders. But only 4 years earlier, it also showed the supreme ability to bring the human race together. Satellites allowed television to be transmitted from anywhere on the globe. Soon, the whole world would be watching as it was beamed from another world.
I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal, before this decade is out, of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the earth.
In the middle of 1969, John F. Kennedy's challenge is about to become a reality. People from all walks of life and all corners of the globe will be fixed to their television sets. On the 20th of July, 1969, the Apollo 11 command module orbits the moon. Over the Sea of Tranquility, the lunar module is released and touches down.
My dad woke me up, got me out of bed, and I went downstairs really tired and sat in front of this TV, watching this silvery image as Neil Armstrong steps onto the moon.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Everyone wanted to share in that moment, and the only way to do that was to sit in front of the television.
It's thought 650 million people tuned in to watch the moon landing. It's one of the greatest events in human history, and television allowed the world to watch as one. And as TV technology moves into the 1970s, the notion of the shared experience changes as the television schedule becomes more personal.
It's been possible to record audio signals onto magnetic tape since the 1930s. The tape is simply a strip of thin plastic that's coated in ferric oxide powder. This powder is a ferromagnetic material, which means that if you expose it to a magnetic field, then it remains permanently magnetized by that field.
Television broadcasters have used magnetic tape recorders since the 1950s, but they certainly weren't built for the living room. These systems are the size of a chest freezer and would cost almost $500,000 in today's money.
But as the decades rolled on, then production costs came down. Companies started to wonder, well, is there a way we can market this to the everyday consumer?
By the 1970s, video recording technology had shrunk to the size of a record player. The video cassette recorder, or VCR, is born. Overnight, viewers are no longer slaves to the television schedules.
Rather than having to wait for something to come on TV, and if you've missed it, well, it's gone, you were able to put your video recorder on, set a timer, catch that program, and then pop the tape in and watch it back whenever you liked. You didn't just have to watch whatever film was on that night, you could pop down to the video rental store and grab whatever film you wanted and watch it at your own convenience. This was a completely new way that people could interact with their TVs.
As the world's leading television manufacturers fight for dominance of the emerging video market, two come to the fore.
Sony released a format called Betamax, and JVC one called VHS. Now, these two kinds of tape were not compatible at all, and that meant there was a battle. Who was going to win? Which were consumers going to choose?
Sony and JVC go into battle, offering distinctly different qualities. Betamax offered better picture and sound quality, while VHS had a longer runtime per cassette. But many believe that in the end, a particular type of content thrust one system to achieve overwhelming market penetration.
There's even a rumor that the final deciding factor in this battle was that VHS allowed pornography, whereas Betamax didn't allow any porn.
You've got to remember, up until this point, to gain access to pornography, you'd have to physically leave your house, endure the embarrassment to go into an actual theater and watch it.
Have to go to some seedy cinema in Soho and sit next to a bloke who was coughing and sniffling. You could go home, draw the curtains, turn on you out, and watch your dirty movie.
Once the porn industry got into bed with VHS, there was only going to be a happy ending for JVC.
Although the idea that pornography is what finally decided the video wars is quite a cute story, ultimately it might just be that VHS tapes and recorders were so much cheaper than their Betamax competitors. And either way, they came to dominate the market.
Although VHS has become a relic of a bygone age, it changed viewing habits forever. Today, viewers expect television content on demand. Advances in television technology and the introduction of the internet mean programs can be streamed at the push of a button to smartphones, tablets, and laptops. You can now see your favorite shows anywhere. Back in 1977, the television set starts showing more than TV when the Atari 2600 game console is released.
That means that your television set is now no longer just about television. It starts to become about entertainment, all the entertainment you can imagine.
Today, the video game industry is worth $137 billion a year, bigger than both the music and film industries combined.
This is really the birth of the television as a complete multimedia device, which it totally is today, where smart TVs can stream stuff, you can read your emails and look at websites, as well as watch what you want whenever you want, and still watch stuff live. Right, all originated back in the 70s.
But invention never sleeps, and televisions are due another massive makeover. For years, television relied on a cathode ray tube to display an image. But as viewers came to expect bigger and bigger screens, this posed a problem. Increasing the screen also increases the size of the cathode ray tube. Large televisions soon became too big for living rooms. If only there were a way to ditch the bulky cathode ray tube.
Enter the LED, the light-emitting diode. Now, these can be made much smaller, much lighter than a traditional light bulb, and they can be switched on and off much faster and with a lot more precision.
In the early days, LEDs are bulky and expensive, useful for super large displays, but still too big for the living room. But as new technology reduced their size and cost, television engineers spotted their potential. Today, almost all modern televisions use LEDs to create a picture. Gone are the bulky tubes and the electron beams. Now, LEDs light up a liquid crystal display made up of red, green, and blue pixels.
Those pixels can either let through light of that colour or they can block it. And it's that combination of red, green and blue light that creates the colours to create that image. It's kind of similar to the older style televisions, but instead of using a cathode ray to light up red, green and blue pixels, it uses the LEDs to light up red, green and blue filters. It's more like a constantly changing stained glass window.
Television sets have become lighter, bigger, and have phenomenal resolution. And advances in new forms of LEDs are improving the picture quality further still. Television is being viewed in more detail than ever before, and now from any location we want. When television first entered the household in the 1950s, it tied the family to the living room.
Before that, you'd have something like the radio. So the focus was different. People could look in different directions, do different things. You could carry on your chores or activities while listening to the radio. When the television comes in, you have to arrange the furniture around it and sit facing the same way, often in silence.
But from the very beginning, television was envious of radio's ability to be received anywhere. It wasn't long before early engineers were designing TV sets to escape the living room.
TV for teenagers, portable televisions, TV on the beach, TV in the car.
But these early portable TV sets were really novelties. It's only now, as the pace of modern invention accelerates, that television can truly break the shackles of the home. Advances in camera technology, smartphones, tablets, and broadband have made it possible for almost anyone to create their own content and show it online. The viewer has now become the broadcaster, and this user-generated content is a growing phenomenon.
It upends the idea of television completely, because you now no longer have to watch what they are making you watch. You can make your own television.
Everyone now has the capability to record something and put it on the internet, often in their pocket. And the same device, your mobile phone, is also the device that will actually enable you to watch whatever content you want to watch.
Television ushered in the era of the global village, but the ability to create, watch, and instant message has taken the concept to a level television could never achieve.
The other thing, of course, that you have these days is the comment features. So you can like things, you can engage with other people. So it feels much more inclusive. It feels like you can weigh in a way that you couldn't really feel about the TV before.
But don't expect television to stand still. Having found a way to transmit moving images, color images, sharper images, inventors today are tackling the final frontier, taking television into the third dimension.
The next big development in home entertainment is going to be virtual reality, augmented reality. As soon as people have a still picture, they want a moving picture. As soon as people have a moving picture, they want to get into it.
Augmented and virtual reality headsets are another quantum leap for television, setting the viewer inside the story, playing out in 360 degrees around them.
With virtual reality, we can place ourselves in the scene, and we have more choice of how we relate to and move through the scene. This idea of immersion is very much at the forefront of future developments in television.
With its ability to thrill, inform, warn, outrage, and even manipulate us, the invention of television has radically affected every aspect of our lives.
It was a form of sort of shared consciousness on a global scale.
It changes how we know what the truth is. And I can't think of anything else that can do that.
What would life be like without television? We'd probably all read books, sing songs, and play charades for hours on end. Pretty bleak.